Oh, now he started early. Hey, good evening, ladies, gents, others, and those still practicing. It's the Gin and Tonic Show. It is Friday. It is the 4th of October, 2019. And this is a podcast where we discuss Islam and only Islam and nothing else. We try and focus on the ideology, and we try not to discuss anything about individual people unless they come here and lie and deceive to us. Otherwise, we're very nice people, I think, very decent, very everything. We enjoy free speech. We enjoy our freedoms. We don't enjoy anybody oppressing anybody else. We don't enjoy violence. We don't enjoy anybody indoctrinating others or oppressing women or anything like that. We are vehemently against FGM or any kind of abuse, physical abuse of anyone who hasn't in any way, what shall we call it, crossed the line, the law or whatever. So we try and use factuality and reasoning, and we don't want to go and attack anyone. We just want to critique. We try and let the Quran speak for itself, which is why we are looking at the Quran sentence for sentence. We don't usually go to the scholars or to the human beings who tell us what the Quran says, but rather we try and do this ourselves and try and understand it. What we normally do is we invite Muslims to the show, and we're not very successful with this because either they're real idiots or they're really immoral, or some have no idea and just want to preach. Now, what we've had in the last couple of weeks is an ex-Muslim who also can read the Quran in Arabic, which I found really fascinating, to say the least. But unfortunately, Faye is not here today, and I'm not even sure if she can make it next week. So you'll have to do with us, which is the panel of Rob and Thunderous. Rob, how's it going? Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show, just for once. Haven't seen you in a while.
Good evening. How are you guys? Good evening to everybody. Hope you're all well, and we're ready to do probably around 20 verses, hopefully, this evening.
And from myself, everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you for listening. And as always, please comment on the side. And if you can't and you're listening to the show after it's been uploaded, please add your comments onto the YouTube comment section. We do go there, we do read them, and when appropriate, we do respond to them. If you have any suggestions and that, they're also welcome too. So if we don't see you or speak to you in the side show tonight, we will communicate with you when it's uploaded in the comment section. So please do that. Thank you very much.
And he embraced it. I think this is so great. I can't even remember who came up with this last week, but it's stuck. So there you go. All right. I just have a very short story because it was the day of the open mosque. And I don't know if people recall a year ago. I can't remember. It's already a year. Jeez, time moves so quickly. A year ago.
Tell us what the open mosque is, Stops, for those who don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, day of the open mosque is that anybody can go into a mosque and talk to people. They have some cookies, they have some tea, they have some people telling people about Islam, and there's they show you around the mosque, and then they tell you all the wonderful things about Islam, how great everything is, how peaceful, and how everything.
That's your very own private speaker's corner, right?
Almost. The only thing is, last year, I don't know if you recall, I went there and I went and encountered the Imam and asked how they handle the inconsistencies, the contradictions, and the mistakes in the Quran. And I didn't want to argue with them. Okay, I was not there now to say, okay, this is the mistake and blah, blah, blah. It's a fact, okay? I think that anyone today, anyone who is a Muslim, an honest Muslim, a Muslim with any degree of integrity, should be able to go to the internet and say, listen, are there any mistakes in the Quran? And Google will answer the question, are there any mistakes in the Quran, with millions of yes. So there is no way around it. So you need to accept it as a fact. And like I said, if you go to a Muslim majority country, you will see that the people are not so, like perturbed by these mistakes. They're not so angry about this, and they don't really worry so much about it. They're more about, well, I need a spiritual link to my Lord and Savior, to my Lord and Creator, and that's it. And if this is true, then, well, good for me. If not, well, then I haven't lost anything. That's the basic reasoning they have. But if you go and ask people here in Europe, it seems to be very, very different. And now, this master guy, when I asked him, how do you handle this? And I didn't really react. He wanted to punch me. So he came at me, fists, swinging, and he had to be subdued. It took 4 guys to drag him out the mosque, and they apologized to me and said, no, it's just that he's been under a lot of stress.
What did he actually attack you for? What did he attack you for?
That I dared insinuate that there's a mistake in the Quran, that there's a contradiction, that there is inconsistency, without me telling him what these are. Because I find it ludicrous to have to go to somebody and say, listen, there's a mistake in the Quran, when, like I say, any honest Muslim will automatically have gone to the internet and asked, are there mistakes in the Quran, just to take a peek, and they must have seen, yep, there's millions of pages with mistakes in the Quran. Okay.
Yeah, but
now whether they accept them, that's a different story. Okay, and whether they think that these are important, or if they are significant for their faith, that's a different story altogether. But they're there. And this is the minimum amount of integrity that I do expect from a Muslim today in the 21st century in Europe, right? And he didn't. He wanted to hit me, and they dragged him out. That was last year. So this year I thought, okay, let me try this again, and see if there's been a change, if there's been any kind of improvement. But now this year they completely. Well, they removed any kind of possible interaction with the people. All they had is that they had some lectures, and then coffee and tea, and then also, a tour of the mosque. But that was it. There was no possibility to interact with anyone. So when I got there, I asked the guy, well, what's the program and blah, what's happening, and blah, blah, blah. And he says, do you know anything about Islam? I said, yeah, I know. I was here a year ago, asked the question, and I wanted to see if there has been any improvement. And he says, well, what is this question? I said, how do you handle, as a Muslim in the 21st century in Europe, how do you handle inconsistencies, contradictions, and mistakes in the Quran? And he just gave me a big look, and he says, excuse me, and then he says, but you said that you know Islam. I said, I know Islam. Yes, I know Islam quite well. I know the Quran. I've read the Sunnah. I'm well versed in all the texts, and this is what is prompting me to this question. He says, interesting. And then someone else came, a girl came, and he said, this gentleman here is saying, how do we handle this? And he says, well, as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't exist. So what I have been taught, and now this is important. He says, the way that I have been taught Islam, there is no such thing. Okay. And this is the takeaway from this. This is the most important part, because more people now showed up. They were less interested in the coffee and tea with the old people inside there, because they were being, I don't know, well, not criticized. They were being challenged, let's call it that. And this was new to them. So all of a sudden, more and more people gathered. And then they said, well, you have to give us an example, because we simply can't believe you. So I said, well, how can you not believe me? It's obvious. If you go to, and I pulled out the phone and I said, look, just enter mistakes in the Quran. And here you see that was, I don't know, 2.8 million hits. And I said, what do you think these are? Yeah, they're all misconceptions and they don't understand that. So I said, are you really telling me that all these 2.5 million people are all stupid? Do you think that I am a ridiculous moron who is not able to read the Quran and compare it with reality? I said, have you ever done that? Have you ever taken a statement in the Quran and compared it with reality? And then another girl heard this and she says, yes, of course, because we all know that the mountains are perfect. And she pulled out her phone and she says, you see here, Frank Press, the guy, he was the scientific advisor to Ronald Reagan. And I said, I'm sure it's going to tell you to go to page 93 and 94 in his book, Earth, right? And she went further, scrolled further down, and then she looked at me with wide eyes and she says, how did you know this? I said, well, because it's a known apologetic. We know all these things are wrong. We know that this is bull dust. And we know that this is just a fabrication, and just to make people believe that there is something there, but it's fake, it's wrong. And this is the problem. I said, we all know that mountains don't get put on top. Yeah, but icebergs are on top. I said, no, even icebergs are not put on top of the earth from the sky. There's nothing on the surface. Even, a couple of months ago in Hawaii, you have a new island, a new mountain, a new something coming out of the sea. It's coming from out of the earth. It doesn't fall down from the sky and suddenly you have a new mountain. And as we speak, we have new mountains. No, that's not possible. They were all created. Our creator created this. I said, well, what is this? What is reality? How do you reconcile this? You can't. That's why it's a mistake in the Quran. Yeah, but the earth doesn't shake. I said, yes, of course it does. Look at the Alps. We just had this horrible earthquake in Italy, in the north of Italy, at the border of the Alps, where I don't know how many hundreds of people died. This is this is what happens. And then I said, yeah, and then just, yeah, but this is all interpretation. And I said, okay, let me pull out the silver bullet. I said, can you interpret 2/3? No, you cannot interpret 2/3. I said, okay, then let's take 2/3. You give me an example, and I walked it through the inheritance and blah, blah, blah. And then another person came, and now we were like 6, 7, maybe 8 people who were all listening to this because they were seriously challenged and they didn't really know how to handle this kind of factual approach that they really couldn't, in any way sidestep or bullshit or things like that. So I said, okay, give me look, there it is. And they said, well, where are these sentences? I said, listen, you're coming to me, an atheist, and I now have to show to you how the Quran works and what the contents of the Quran is? Seriously? Okay, I said, but I'll help you, don't worry. 411, go. Take a look what it says. Yeah, but this is just a translation. I said, there you have it in Arabic. There you have it, and I still have the Quran from Doha, and this Quran they accept because for some odd reason this is an app that everybody seems to have on their phones, and so they recognize this and they said, yeah, okay, this is Arabic and this is English or German or whatever. That's correct. I said, read what it says in 411. Yeah, but this is for the brother. I said, no, let's make a very easy example. No brothers, no, nothing. Just take one couple. They have just children and parents, and that's it. Now, we started discussing this for like 15 minutes. And then, and this is the amazing thing, and this is where I'm so proud of these people, they pulled out pieces of paper to actually make a diagram of the constellation of the parents and the daughters and the father and mother of the male who died. And now they actually went and applied the Quran sentences one by one in a methodological, in a constructive way. And that is the first time that I see this. Yep. And then this was now big eyes. Oh, fuck, no, I must have made a mistake. I said, well, just make it, I'll give you a shortcut. How much is 2/3 plus 1/6 plus a 6th? It's 1. Yes, it's 1. Okay, where does the 8th come from for the wife? Oh, fuck, okay. And now everybody was like in a frenzy. And so the girl went off and then got some guy, and she says, this is a guy who knows Islam. It was an older guy. And he says, what's the problem? I said, no, there's no problem. And he says, who are you? I said, I'm nobody. I'm just here to ask questions. And I just want to understand how Muslims in the 21st century in Europe today handle the Quran. That's all this is about. And here I have people. He says, yeah, but why are you confusing the children? I said, number one, they're not children. And number two, I'm not confusing anyone. I am just interacting with people, asking them questions, and we're having a conversation about this. Yeah, but don't do this. I said, who the fuck are you? Well, I didn't say, oh, the fuck. Who are you? Why are you barking orders? He says, well, I'm one of the board members here, because in Germany, you need to appreciate that the mosques are private companies. They're not, government institutions or something. They're all private companies set up just like a limited. So he comes in and he now chases everybody out. And then he says, you are a charlatan. I said, okay, I'm a charlatan, and you're not going to answer my question. And he interrupts me. And then when he's finished, okay, are you finished? And then I say, okay, look, what I'm trying to do is I'm asking a question. I'm trying to establish how and immediately he interrupts me again. So when he's finished, I ask him, okay, are you finished? Can I talk now? Because you constantly interrupt me. This doesn't work. If you're having a conversation, you have to let me say something, and then you say something, and then I respond to what you said. Okay, that's how it works, okay? And he says, what, you come in here and you think you can challenge us and we need to provide the evidence? I say, that's exactly what I want to do. He says, are you mad? We don't have to prove anything to you. I said, of course you do. Otherwise, I'm not going to believe it. It's up to you. You don't have to. If you don't do it, okay, then those skin of mine eyes. I don't care. And then he says, no, I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to leave. That's it. And he left me standing. And then I said, well, there's no point here. I'm going to leave. And what I should have told, I still told him, look, the people here, the young people here, they are willing to listen. They are willing to interact. They're interested in what other people have to say. You're not. And that's when I turned around. I said, you are the example of what Islam puts into people's heads, and that's why it's failing. And I turned around and left. And that was it. Now, I should have still left him, told him, listen, you are actually the problem. You are not the solution. You're the problem. But at least they didn't hit me this time. And what I am very proud of is that there are Muslims, young Muslims, who in today's day and age are starting to think, are starting to question, are starting to have other people have their say and then respond and interact with it. And that is the whole point of the story that I'm trying to make here, that I'm very happy with how these people reacted, that they didn't immediately try and fight with me like last year, but that they were willing to think about this. And what I'm hoping what I did, because I stress this a lot of times, compare the Quran to reality. And that is, I think, what I'm hoping what you're doing.
Yeah, no,
and that's
it.
Good. No, not everybody clapped. No, quite the contrary. Because
Can you hear me?
the people that I was interacting with were chased off, and this one guy was just an obnoxious asshole.
Stops, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I talked earlier and I was asking you, but you either couldn't hear me or whatever.
Oh, no,
it just didn't come through. Okay, cool. No worries. Yeah, interesting story, right? And yeah, we've got this, we've got this place, and we tell people about this, but who are you to come in here and ask us to defend our claims, right? Essentially, their claims, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say,
it's what the young people understood. Exactly.
And of course, there's pressure on these old guys, right? Because they're supposedly seen as elders and knowledgeable. And then when you present something in the Quran, which they should be quite familiar with and well read on, as opposed to the young people, and they're not, then, and they want us to go, well, hey, I'll need to just look that up, right? I'm not a walking encyclopedia, which is fine. But, to chase you out to make the silly statement, hey, we're not here to defend it, or we're not here to answer your questions or whatever. Well, in a sense, you are. Why are you inviting people in?
Look at the Quran. The Quran clearly says you have to.
I think you have to bear in mind as well that the questions that you're asking stops. And when you talk about an older generation, the older generation are so used to typical questions that were asked, considering the limited knowledge that people had at the time when they were asking for or demanding answers from Islam. Now, with the advent of the internet, social media, People are, are probably a little bit more sophisticated than they were in the past. So the questions that they're asking are new, not just to the audience looking for newer questions to ask of Islam, but they're new for Muslim imams and defenders as well. They've never heard these questions before, so it's
Exactly.
embarrassing. So it's embarrassing for a Muslim imam to try and answer a question he himself should be able to answer, but he can't answer it because he's never heard the question before. The damning indictment is he should have the answer because he's an imam and he should be able to defend his faith. The fact that you can't answer a simple question, irrespective of the sophistication of people's minds now, the answers are there in the Quran anyway, so you should be able to formulate an answer based on your own faith and knowledge. And that's where the problem lies as well.
Yeah, but the thing is that my question I think for the younger generation is more interesting and fascinating because it is confrontative. Of course it is, but they're more fascinated by the question itself. The older generation is immediately threatened.
Yeah. The older generation as well, I've got that mindset. There are certain phrases, I dare say all countries have them, but in England we have one, he's stuck in his ways, meaning that when people get to a certain generation, they become stubborn and set in their ways as to not how their behavior, but their mindset too. Islam is very much like the Muslim mind for the older generation are set, whereas because the world technologically, socially and such was probably quite stagnant or regular from one generation to the next for many years. But in today's day and age, people are having to change the way they think. What with new social media, new technology, the mind continue has to keep up to date with newer forms of doing things. Hence why a younger mind is probably a little bit more articulate and savvy to an older mind because it's working a little bit more than what an older mind did in the past, even when an older mind was a bit young. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. It does to me.
Yeah.
Meaning, I think the best way to say, I use the illustration of television. When your dad got television, say 20, 30 years ago, he had that television in his home for about 10, 15 years before he changed it. Now people have a television for about 10 or 15 months before they change it because the technology updates that much more quickly. So that means you're having to learn something new with reference to the operating system. So your mind is continually taking a little bit more information at an accelerated rate than what it did in the past. Youth today are very much used to that, whereas the older generation never had that. And in that sense, religiously speaking, they didn't have people like yourself, myself, or the internet, social media, or critical thinking as it is now to allow them to answer those questions or to even have those questions posed to them in the past. Society back then probably didn't even consider asking those questions because you got to remember, the Quran as it is now is not the Quran as it was back then. Back then, it wasn't something so readily available. You had to proactively go to the library or a bookshop to go and buy one. You can't just sit at home, turn on the internet and have access one, download one on a PDF and read it for yourself as what you could do now, what you couldn't do in the past. The same thing is with the tafsirs and the hadith. You didn't have YouTube to have a discussion with either, which is what you can do now. And you know as well as I do, sometimes you can have a discussion with somebody on a certain subject and it spontaneously creates more questions the more you discuss that subject because somebody can mention something that sparks off another thought or a train of thought. We do that now when we're having discussions on the Quran, when we go from ayah to ayah, where you say something, then it makes me consider something that I hadn't considered before. You do that to me, and I'm hoping that I do that to you, and I'm definitely hoping that members of the audience have that experience as well, that they're listening to us and they're considering things that they've never considered because they're hearing the way that we discuss things on the show. And it's the same way with the questions that have been posed or the comments on the YouTube channel. Those things I have learned from too. I won't deny that. Hence why, and I think the youth today are more savvy with that than what the generations of the past were. Hence why the imams today have got a problem. They've got the problem within Islam because these questions are also coming from Muslims. Got to bear in mind, Yasser Qadi on his show about Gog and Magog, 3 weeks ago, he actually said most of the problems, this is the thing that's causing the lack of faith and disbelief in Islam and causing people to walk away. You and I and Stops and many others will know there is more to it than just Gog and Magog as far as the Quran is concerned. It's causing problems. There are many other problems, but that one is once being held up as the banner now, as this is causing problems, and the imams just don't know how to deal with it. So they've got problems within their own community as far as Islam is concerned. Never mind non-Muslims coming in and posing problems too. And the problem is when non-Muslims come in and they're posing questions, and you got Muslims standing there thinking, I've never heard it put like that before. I've heard of that question before. I've heard of that problem before. I've never heard it put like that before. And now it's causing me a load of reactions in my own mind and heart. And the Imam certainly doesn't want to hear that.
And I think it goes even a little bit further than that, because I just saw the reaction here by Abdul Lubda, where I'm still not sure whether it's a troll or
Damn,
a Muslim.
you beat me to it. No, he is a Muslim.
Okay, because this is exactly the attitude that I see, where it's not that I'm going to tell you this and this, but hiding behind others, going to the others and have them tell you off. And this is exactly what he says. Well, we are still the intellectual leaders in Speaker's Corner and in YouTube or whatever it was. And this is exactly the point. But he says, I'm stupid. I don't know what to do. But there are people who are, like really like high-level intellectuals. But he's incapable of bringing any kind of argument up himself, but always referring to others. And this is what I see happening. So this is what you were just referring to, where the people are unable to handle questions, and if they do actually hear the question, will go to others to have them answer it in case they don't know what they're saying and they're saying something wrong. And this is quite amazing how they shun responsibility and always try and go and speak to somebody else. But instead, I understand this Abdul Lubda, why doesn't he come on the show? If we're like I remember the first time we had this Burma guy. He came on and he said, yeah, I was listening on the road last week when you were talking about what was it, Sharia or something, and everything you said was wrong. I said, okay, can you give us one example? No, I don't know an example. I said, well, what was wrong? Well, I don't know what was wrong, but it was wrong. There's no point in coming and saying everything is wrong. There's no point in coming here, well, you don't know what you're talking about, without telling us what it is that is wrong with what we are saying. It doesn't work like that. You need to be a little bit more, substantive. You need to come and say, okay, this is the problem, and this is why it's a problem, and here's what is right. But just blindly doing things doesn't help. It's exactly what Thunder Jew was now trying to make out. That if you are stymied by a question, well, then say so and say, listen, let me check this, let me get back to you and do this. But just ranting and raving and calling me names doesn't really. Yeah.
But the thing is, that's been the generic default of Muslims from time immemorial, from when I was growing up. I'll tell you, for me, when it all began, I can trace it back to, in my own experience, to people like Ahmed Didat. When Ahmed Didat came on the show, or on the scene, he became the poster boy and flagship for, now we've got our champion for Islam versus every religion of the world. So he became the poster boy for buying so Muslims would buy his DVDs, invite people around, listen to this guy, or copy and plagiarize his arguments. And that's been the systematic default in Islam. Go speak to a scholar, go speak to a guy who learned, go speak to the Imam. So that has been handed down. This is where I go with Islam now. And I'll ask this question of you guys, and hopefully this will make sense. So I'll ask you guys, which is where does the problem lie? The person that's being fooled or the one that's doing the fooling? Who do you think, if you had to correct somebody, would you correct the person that's being fooled, or would you correct?
Come on, don't ask that question.
For the sake of the audience. For the sake of the audience, where would the responsibility lie? If you had a truth on a certain subject, would you go to the person that's being fooled, or would you go to the person that's doing the fooling? Logic dictates, to use a phrase, to sin by silence when we should make protests makes cowards out of men. Logic dictates you go to the person that's doing the lying and doing the fooling. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
But it's just but if he's a religious leader and he's lying to the people, you would have to go to the religious leader and say, look, you're lying to the people. Here are the facts. I'll cite an example, right? Nadir Ahmed, for instance, will turn around and say that all people who believe that the death penalty by Islam is wrong, it's a misconception, and all the scholars that are saying that you have to kill somebody who leaves Islam, they've all got it wrong. Why are you wasting your time then, Nadir? Wasting your time trying to correct the Western thinking on Islam, which is in black and white in the text. Why aren't you going to all the Muslim scholars for dollars and correcting their misinterpretation of what they teach then? The responsibility is to go and correct the teachers, not the and then they themselves will be corrected. But why don't they? They don't do it because it brings a reproach on themselves as well, and it makes them themselves a target. So when you're looking at the difficulties that you're talking about Islam and its contradiction and its lies and such, it doesn't help when Muslims are not correcting other Muslims in higher authority or in higher positions of teaching. They only seem to be wasting their time concerned with the Western understanding or the non-Muslim understanding of Islam rather than the Muslim teaching of what Islam really is. And that for me is where a bigger problem is as well, that nobody seems to want to address.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sidetracked here with what I'm being accused of, which is total nonsense. But anyway, Rob, do you want to answer Thunder Jew?
Yeah,
Legitimate child of Christian prince. Did you see that there? Somebody's accused me of being the illegitimate child of Christian prince.
I don't know about that. I didn't see that. I've just seen Abdul Luda claiming that Brother Muhammad Hijab's subs are growing, but your subs are stagnating. That may or may not be true, but that all that tells you that there's a lot of gullible people that are being fooled and are signing up, right? Because most Muslims are taught what to think and not how to think, right? If they were frauds, this would not happen. That's a non sequitur. Okay, that doesn't follow. The fact that somebody's getting subs does not mean that they're truthful. Look at all the flat earthers and all the other conspiracy theories. They gain hundreds, if not thousands, of subs. Nobody would suggest that they are truthful. So that's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. It's an error in your thinking among many other errors. And your claim about stop spamming, claiming that Hijab had answered their inheritance, he hasn't. And you can bring him on here and we'll correct it. He obviously won't accept it. We'll show why he's wrong. In fact, we'll probably do that week after next, depending on how far we get tonight, if we actually get started in the Quran at some point. And we'll show how that's wrong. So you can please do go and call Brother Hijab here and we will show why he's wrong. Of course, he won't accept it. He'll run away, but that's all right.
The funny thing is, I saw somebody bring up this error. Then BR Hijab, I don't know, Buddha representative Hijab or something, made a video sitting in his car, which looked very awkward. And he said, no, because it's like this and this. And that prompted me then to make a video to address this, to set the record straight and to show the facts. And not to go and bullshit people, but to actually show what the Quran says, bit by bit, compare it with reality or to reality, and therefore refute everything that Hijab has said. Hijab, and I'm not the coward, I go to Hijab and I will tell him, listen, you are wrong and here's why. Hijab, however, is too shit scared to come here and try and challenge us. That's a fact. And that is why I don't understand how anybody can say anyone has ever refuted me, especially not on inheritance, because the inheritance refutation is impossible. You cannot do this. You cannot interpret 2/3 plus 1/3. You cannot do that. It will always be wrong. And it doesn't matter. There's two methods that are applied. One is the proportionate, and other one is the reduction method. Both are wrong if you compare it to the Quran. So you cannot. So there's no way that you can refute this.
We'll get
and this is why my question
time,
is valid. Why are you not able to accept it? Or how do you handle those mistakes? And that is something that a Muslim will have to learn, to live with the mistakes in the Quran. That's it. That was the message. That was the whole reason for the story, that people need to learn how to compare stuff to reality, to actually go and look what the Quran says, compare that to reality, and then come to a conclusion. That is the way that it works.
Thunder is the poster boy
Right.
of illegitimate child of Christian Prince, fake ex-Muslim, a token Christian on atheist panel. Sorry to say. Oh, don't be sorry. I wish Christian Prince was my dad. He's amusing. It'd be great to have a funny dad.
Okay.
All right.
No,
Shall we?
it's not smaller like this.
You
At
sure?
least you can see who's talking. So what we did last time, we went and we said, to Allah belong the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and indeed in the creation of heavens and earth and the alternation of night, they are signs of those of understanding. And we looked at this and we said, no, this is total nonsense. It's also a non sequitur. It's also something that does not follow one from the other and therefore does not make sense. So that's where we left it last week. Do you want to pick this up, or shall we just jump to the next one?
No, if you've already dealt with this last week, let's move on. At least we know where we're starting from.
So let's do 190. Unfortunately, Faye is not here to do the Arabic, so we'll just have to make do. Rob, do you want to do the reading?
So 3190, Sahih International. Indeed, 3190, didn't we just read this? Or 391?
No, 390, because we had, oh no, sorry, this is 390. Yeah, this is in connection. I just wanted to show the connection between the two. And then here we said, we started talking about this last time, I think, where we said there is no sign here, and the alternation of night and day are just observations, and finished. That's it.
All right, so we're on 191 then?
So is there anything else we want to add here?
No, I just want to say thank you to Simon James, because he's just put a comment in there. Ex-Muslims, the best of creations. Very good, very good.
True.
All right, so we're on 191, or where are we? Stops?
So this is the people of understanding. This is what we're talking about.
Okay, Sahih International. Who remember Allah while standing or sitting or lying on their sides and give thought to the creation of the heavens and earth, saying, our Lord, you did create this aimlessly. You did not create this aimlessly. Exalted are you above such a thing. Then protect us from the punishment of fire. Yusuf Ali. Men who celebrate the praise of Allah, standing, sitting, and lying down on their sides, and contemplate the wonders of creation in the heavens and the earth, with the thought, our Lord, not for naught hast thou created this. Glory to thee. Give us salvation from the penalty of fire. So obviously they are seeing what they want to see, obviously ignoring the things that are a creator presumably of Allah's ability wouldn't do. So they ignore those bits. They look at the good bits, which is just what humans do, right? Where we are pattern seeking. So we ignore the misses and we remember the hits, and then they are obviously wanting to be exalted. They want to exalt him to avoid punishment in the fires. No, that's obviously why would you need the penalty of fire? Why do you need to have the punishment of fire?
Exactly.
If he didn't create it aimlessly, what did he create it from? According to the Quran, what? So it's a test so they can worship him. Again, is that the sort of creator that you'd want, that creates his creation simply to worship him? But no, the Muslims will tell us you have free will. But at the same time, the Quran has given you a message of what you are supposed to be doing. So he's created you to do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't, there's the punishment and fire. So if you lie down and look at the wonders of creation and ignore all of the bad parts, then you can exalt him. Well, sure, you can do that if you want to. But the rest of us will take a more holistic approach and go, hang on a moment, not everything's as wonderful as it could be. So either the Allah designer is not a perfect designer, or there's some other mystery as to why there's all these errors, mistakes, or things that could have been designed better. And what does a Muslim have to say about that?
Nothing to add from me. Thunderous, any ideas or?
Rinse and repeat, isn't it? It's the same old thing,
Yeah.
rinse and repeat.
Okay.
So 3192, Sahi International. Our Lord, indeed, whatever you admit to the fire, you have disgraced him, and for the wrongdoers there are no helpers. Sorry, our Lord, indeed, whoever you admit. Yeah, I did get that. Yusuf Ali. Our Lord, any whom thou dost admit to the fire, thou coverest with shame, and never will wrongdoers find any helpers. Whoever you admit to the fire, you have disgraced him. So you have presumably you have covered with shame, you have disgraced him. Presumably this is the people that have disgraced. I don't know how you quite how you disgrace God. Presumably you can anger him, you can do things that he's told you not to do. I'm not too sure how you disgrace him, because that would necessitate that he feels disgrace. Does he? It seems like an odd emotion for an all-powerful God to have, disgrace. And presumably then that would be reflected on him, because he's created these, creatures, and he knows what they're going to do, yet they have free will. So we'll ignore the paradox. Let's assume that he does know what they're going to do. Isn't that a reflection on him? I suppose you could argue that yes, he is disgraced because he's looking in the mirror or looking at his own creation that he created, knowing what they're going to do, and feels a sense of disgrace. I probably would if I had that power too, but then I would obviously have the power to create differently. So, but if it's suggesting that humans can somehow disgrace him, I'm not sure how that follows. Maybe somebody can help me with that.
No, I think you have disgraced him, and that is the guy that you admit to the fire.
Who's you though in that scenario though? Is that Allah, or is that somebody else?
Whoever you admit, in other words, person A gets admitted to the fire. You have disgraced person A. For the wrongdoers, there are no helpers. So you have disgraced person A because for the wrongdoers, there are no helpers.
Okay, that's not so clear to me. I'm not going to admit anybody to fire. The only person that can admit it, or the only being, would be Allah, right?
Well, this is what I say here. Our Lord, whomever you admit, in other words, you admit whomever is person A, our Lord, person A, whom you admit into the fire to abide therein, you will have abased, you will have humiliated person A.
Oh, okay. So Allah has humiliated the person he's put into the fire.
Correct.
Okay, got. So Allah's disgraced the person put into the fire. Allah's discovered this person with shame.